The church is full of light and lace. The choir is humming softly. The flowers smell like rain. Daniel stands at the altar in a clean white suit. His smile is calm, his eyes are gentle. The pastor asks him to say his vows. He lifts the mic and says, "I kept myself pure. I have lived in celibacy waiting for this day." People clap. A few women nod with tears. Grace, his bride, squeezes her bouquet and looks at him like sunrise. Then the big wooden doors fly open. A young woman in a simple cream dress steps in, breathless, her hair pinned back, face tired and brave. 3 babies are on her chest and hips. Triplets, 2 boys and a girl wrapped in soft blue and pink blankets. Their tiny fingers claw at the air. The woman points at Daniel and says loud enough to shake the flowers, "Your husband forgot something." The church freezes. The choir stops mid-note. The babies start to cry. Daniel's smile falls off his face. His lips part but no words come. Grace's bouquet slips a little. The pastor blinks and lowers the mic. The ushers look at each other, unsure. Someone near the back coughs and then covers his mouth like the sound might explode the room. "Who are you?" the pastor asks, trying to sound calm. The woman takes 1 step down the aisle. "My name is Miriam," she says. "And those are his children." The triplets wail louder as if backing up her voice. Eyes turn to Daniel. He sways like a tree in a sudden wind. He opens his mouth again. Nothing. He looks at Grace. He looks at the pastor. He looks at the floor as if it might open and swallow him whole. The air is heavy. The truth sits in it like a stone in a bowl of water, not sinking, not floating, just staring at everyone. Miriam lifts a small brown envelope. "I didn't want this. But I can't keep being a whisper." She lifts the envelope higher so the front row can see there are papers inside. "He promised me. He promised all of us." Grace takes a small step back. Her veil shivers. A tiny flower falls, landing at her feet. "Daniel," the pastor says softly, "do you know this woman?" Daniel's answer is a breath you can barely hear. "I." The church power flickers as if even the lights are not strong enough for what is happening. And in that half-dark, just before the lights steady, a sharp voice from the back shouts, "Tell the truth, Daniel." The lights come back bright, burning the moment into everyone's eyes. And that is where the cliff hangs, with a bride shaking, a mother clutching 3 crying babies, and a groom's truth trapped in his throat, while every ear leans forward for the next word. Weeks before that Sunday, the story was a sweet stream running quiet. Daniel was known for quiet. He spoke softly, walked softly, and smiled like a promise. He worked at a small tech shop that fixed phones and laptops. People trusted him. He was the man who stayed late to help an old lady clean a virus off her computer. He was the man who would pray with a scared teen and say, "Hold on. It gets better." He sang in church, second row, baritone, steady. When the pastor needed a volunteer to carry boxes to the food pantry, Daniel lifted 2 at once and said, "Thank you for the chance." Grace was light. She taught music at a neighborhood center. She laughed with her whole face. She had a way of making children who could not sit still without raising her voice. She liked bright skirts and white sneakers. When she sang, even the old fans on the ceiling turned slower, as if trying to listen better. People said, "They match." People said, "This is a good thing." They met on a Saturday morning when the community painted the school fence. Grace had blue paint on her cheek. Daniel pointed and said, "You missed a spot." She pointed at his shirt where he had splashed a big circle of yellow. "So did you." They laughed like cousins then, easy and free. They started talking. They started walking home the same way. They started sharing small dreams. Her dream to start a children's choir that traveled. His dream to build an app that taught people how to keep their devices safe. They would sit on the low wall by the mango tree near the corner store, feet tapping the brick, twirling plastic cups of cold juice, talking until the street lights blinked awake. In church the elders loved them. "Keep the courtship clean," one elder said, smiling like the sun was inside her. Daniel nodded. Grace nodded too. The elder pressed their hands and prayed. Kindness moved through that time like a quiet hand smoothing rumpled cloth. When Grace's neighbor broke her arm, Daniel drove her to the clinic and waited outside the whole time, reading to kids in the waiting room. When Daniel's shop got robbed, Grace organized a small benefit concert at the community center. The center was full that night, with borrowed lights and mismatched chairs and drums that rattled. Grace sang, "Hold on, my friend." The jar filled with small bills and coins. People clapped until their palms hurt. Daniel cried once, alone behind the curtain where no one could see him, and then walked out with a strong face and said thank you to everyone, one by one. But even quiet rivers carry stones underneath. There were whispers on certain streets. A woman pushing a stroller would pause when she saw Daniel and then quickly look away. A teenage boy once called out, "Preacher man," and laughed in a way that was not kind. Daniel pretended not to hear. Grace heard. She asked him once, "What is that about?" He put his hand on his chest. "People talk," he said. "Let them talk." She wanted to ask again deeper, but his eyes, warm and steady, made her swallow the question. She told herself trust is also love. She told herself do not build a wall where there is no war. One day after choir rehearsal, the pastor asked Daniel to share a testimony of obedience at the wedding. The church had a special tradition. The groom and bride would each speak about the road that brought them to the altar, the choices they made, the mistakes they left behind, the lessons they learned. Grace wrote hers slowly with honesty and soft light. She wrote about fear and about patience. She wrote about how her heart was a house with many rooms, and she was learning to open the windows. Daniel said he would speak from the heart. He held his notes like feathers and said, "God will give me the words." 2 nights before the wedding, the wind picked up and the rain came in a hard belt that beat the roofs and washed the dust from the leaves. Grace sat by her window and prayed. She asked for simple things: peace, joy, a smooth day. Somewhere across town, a woman named Miriam stood in her kitchen where one light bulb hummed and did not blink. 3 babies slept in a line like little commas between 2 long sentences. Miriam closed her eyes and tried to remember what it felt like to be only one person, not one person divided into 4 by hunger and worry and a love that was real and wrong at the same time. She did not plan to go to the wedding. She told herself, let him have his life. She told herself you can raise them alone. But the next morning in the market she overheard 2 women talking near the tomatoes. "The groom is so holy," one said. "He says he kept himself pure for marriage." Miriam stood still, the tomatoes bright as hearts in the sun. The words cut across her like a thin knife. She paid for onions and walked home and cried while she chopped. Her tears fell into the food. Salt without a shaker. Kindness is not soft. It is strong. It does not always mean silence. She thought of the triplets, Eli, Noah, and Hope, breathing like small birds in a nest. She thought of the promise Daniel made in a quiet room where no one clapped and no band played, just 2 people, 2 hands, and a small ring that was not official but felt like it. She thought of being a shadow in the city where she had a name. She wiped her eyes. She wrote a note she might never read in public. She tucked the papers in an envelope. She told the babies, "We are going to look for the truth." They gurgled, not knowing. On the wedding morning, the sun returned like a guest who forgot something. The churchyard was bright and busy. Children chased each other between cars. Aunties set out jollof and chicken in trays behind the hall. Uncles joked near the gate. The choir warmed their voices. Grace arrived with her friends, floating in white. Daniel arrived with his best man, smiling with his mouth, but his right hand kept pressing his left wrist as if his pulse needed checking. People took their seats. The pastor lifted his hands for quiet. The music lowered. The scene inched toward the place where a vow becomes a bridge. And then the doors opened and Miriam walked in with the triplets. Back in the present, everyone is still staring. "Daniel?" the pastor asks again, firmer now. "Do you know this woman?" Daniel breathes out. It sounds like a tire losing air. He nods, a small nod, the kind you might miss if you blinked. A shiver runs through the crowd like a wave in tall grass. Grace's face goes pale under her makeup. "I need to explain," Daniel says, his voice hoarse. He takes a step toward the edge of the altar. "Please." Miriam lifts her chin, but there is pain in her eyes. "Explain to them," she says quietly. "But remember to explain to me." Grace's fingers open and close on the bouquet. She looks at Miriam's babies. Their cries have softened to hiccups. The little girl is sucking her thumb, eyes glossy. Grace's throat works like she is trying to swallow a stone. She whispers to no one and to everyone, "Triplets." The pastor turns to the people and raises one hand. "Let us keep order," he says. His voice trembles. "Let us hear before we judge." Daniel tries to speak. The first word is "I." The second is "was." The third never makes it out because a voice from the front row, an older woman with a head wrapped tied like a crown, stands up and says clear as a bell, "I warned you, Daniel." It is Daniel's mother. Everyone turns. Her face is a map of worry lines and love lines, all crossing. She looks at her son the way a lighthouse looks at a ship that did not see the rocks. "I told you the truth finds legs," she says softly. It always walks into the room. Silence falls heavy. The truth is no longer at the door. It is sitting with them, knees touching the pews. The pastor opens his mouth to ask the mother what she means, but before he can, a teenage boy at the back, one of the tech volunteers, panics and tries to mute the mic. His hand slips and presses another button. The church projector, which was set for the slideshow of childhood photos, Grace at a piano, Daniel at a school prize giving, suddenly flickers to life, and a phone screen appears mirrored by accident. On the giant screen, frozen mid-frame, is a video thumbnail. Daniel and Miriam on a cheap couch, close together, eyes wet with hope. The play button sits like a red eye in the center. Someone gasps so loud it sounds like thunder. The teenage boy scrambles to unplug the cable. His fingers shake. The projector's fan whirs like a trapped insect. The pastor turns toward the screen, stunned. Grace whispers, "No, no, no." Daniel staggers a step, hand outstretched as if he could reach into the light and hold the image still. Miriam closes her eyes. The babies stir. The teenage boy's hand slips again. The video begins to play. Friends, where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments so I can greet you by name in the next story. If this story has your heart beating fast, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who loves suspense and life lessons. The video fills the whole wall like a window to a room no one was invited to see. The picture is a little shaky. A cheap couch. A tiny table with 2 plastic cups. Daniel and Miriam sitting close. She is wearing a blue dress with white dots. He has on a gray t-shirt. Their hands are linked. They look at the camera and smile like 2 people who believe tomorrow will be gentle. A voice behind the camera, a woman, says, "Say what you want to remember." Miriam looks at Daniel. Daniel looks at Miriam. He squeezes her fingers and says, "I want to remember that I promised to be a husband who stays." Miriam says, "I want to remember that I am not a secret. Not to you. Not to myself." They both laugh, shy and bright. Then the video cuts to a small room with a banner on the wall, City Hall, Marriage Office. A clerk stands behind a desk with a form. Daniel and Miriam stand shoulder to shoulder. The clerk asks, "Do you take?" They both say, "I do." Someone in the real church whispers, "Oh my God." On the screen, Daniel slides a thin silver ring onto Miriam's finger. The clerk stamps a paper with a loud thump that even the phone camera catches. The stamp looks like a drumbeat. The teenage tech volunteer finally yanks the cable. The screen goes black. The projector fan spins down. The church breathes like it was underwater and just came up. Grace's bouquet slips from her hands and hits the floor with a soft thud. White petals scatter like quiet snow. She doesn't bend to pick it up. She stares at the spot on the wall where the video was, like it might come back and finish the sentence. The pastor's mouth is open. He closes it. He opens it again. He looks at Daniel, then at Miriam, then at the people. "We will take 5 minutes, he says, but his voice is small and the words do not move anyone. Miriam shifts the babies on her hips, adjusting the slings with a mother's fast fingers. Eli rubs his eyes. Noah hiccups. Hope looks around like she is trying to place this big, bright room in her baby map of the world. Daniel steps forward. His shoes touch the edge of the altar like he is stepping to the cliff. He puts both hands up, palms out, a man trying to calm a storm with his fingers. "I am sorry," he says. The apology hits the room and slides down the pews. "I'm sorry to everyone. I'm sorry to you, Grace. I'm sorry to you, Pastor. And Miriam, I am sorry to you most of all." He looks at his mother. She looks back steady, sad. He nods like he needs her blessing to keep standing. "I did marry Miriam," he says. The words wobble but they stand. "It was last year. It was at City Hall. It was real." A wave moves through the people. Some shake their heads. Some press hands to their chest. Some whisper, "I knew something." Some whisper, "I never knew." Grace's lips part. Her voice is soft. "Why?" It is one word but it carries a whole world. Why would you plan another wedding? Why say you were celibate? Why say you were clean when you were not even free? Daniel closes his eyes for a second, like he is trying to pull the right words up from a deep well. He opens them and faces her. "Because I was a coward." The word is simple. It sits between them like a stone. "I met Miriam before I met you," he says. "I met her at the shelter where I volunteered on Tuesdays. She was helping in the kitchen. I liked the way she spoke to people. No pity. Just respect. We started walking home the same way sometimes. We talked. We tried not to like each other too much. But we did." He swallows. "She told me she had no family in town. I told her I had a mother and a church. We both had small paychecks and big hopes. One day we stood in that office and said yes. I told myself I would tell the church slowly. I told myself I would tell my mother first. I told myself I would do it right. He looks at Miriam. Then she got pregnant. With 3. I thought it was a sign. I thought this is joy. And then fear came like rain that doesn't stop. He looks at the pastor. I sing in this church. People look up to me. They say I am an example. The rules are heavy, pastor. Not bad but heavy. I was scared. People want the faces on the stage to be spotless. I'm not spotless. I am a man who makes mistakes and tries to fix them and sometimes breaks them worse. His voice breaks a little. I hid. I hid from truth. I hid from Miriam. I hid inside the good things I did like they were a coat that could make me invisible. I thought I could delay the telling until after I had saved more money, after the babies were older, after my mother got used to the idea, after. But the truth does not wait for your calendar. He turns to Grace. Then I met you. And I liked you. I liked you too much. I told myself we are only friends. I told myself you will end it before it becomes a promise. But I didn't end it. When the pastor asked for our testimony, I planned to say safe things. I planned to say obedience, and purity, and waiting, because those words always make people clap. I wanted the applause more than I wanted the truth. That is the hardest sentence I have ever said out loud. A hush covers the room like a thin blanket. People shift in their seats. No one claps. A baby in the back lets out a squeak. Grace blinks and 2 slow tears spill down, leaving clear lines on her powdered cheeks. You didn't just lie to me, she says, and her voice is still soft but it has steel in it now. You lied to a room full of people who trusted you. You lied to yourself. Daniel nods. Yes. Miriam's eyes are wet but dry at the same time, an old trick of mothers who do not have time to cry when hands must hold babies. You lied to the little ones, she says, her voice gentle but not weak. They will grow. They will ask how they came into this family. I will say they came through a door that was half open and half closed, and the wind almost took them. But they held on. Daniel turns to her and his face is all pain. I know I do not deserve your softness. He looks at the triplets. I know I do not deserve theirs. The pastor lifts the mic again. His hand has stopped shaking. We are not a court, he says. But we are a house of truth. And we are a house of mercy. He looks from Daniel to Miriam to Grace. We will not solve this in an hour. We will not speak words that should be said in private in front of everyone. But we also will not pretend we did not see what we saw. He puts the mic on the stand. For now, we will step aside from the ceremony and give these 3 a room to talk. The rest of us will pray quietly and wait. We will not gossip. We will not throw stones with our tongues. Some people nod. Some people look away. Some people are angry. Some people are hurt. But the pastor's steady voice builds a small bridge over the cracked floor. An usher leads Daniel, Grace, and Miriam to a side room behind the choir loft. Daniel's mother follows, slow, like a shadow that stayed loyal when the sun moved. The door closes. The church hums with whispers that try not to be whispers. In the side room the air is cooler. A round table sits under a window. There is a box of tissues in the middle. A picture of a dove hangs on the wall. The triplets settle, their noise small now, like rain on leaves. For a moment no one speaks. You can hear the faint buzz of the lights. You can hear one of the babies snore, a tiny baby snore. Then Daniel's mother steps up and lays a hand on the table. I am going to say one thing first, she says. I love all of you. That love does not mean I agree with every choice. It means I will sit in the hard place with you until the place becomes soft enough to stand on. Her voice is low but fierce. This is not the day I prayed for. But love does not leave. Grace looks at her and something in Grace's face loosens, like a knot untied but not undone. Thank you, she whispers. Miriam nods once. Thank you. Daniel covers his face with his hands and breathes out. He drops his hands. I will not hide, he says. Ask me anything. Grace speaks first. Why did you stand there and say you were celibate? She is not shouting. She is building a careful path with her words. Even if we were not meant to be, why take the mic and make your lie a sermon? Daniel flinches at that. Because I thought if I wore the right shirt, people would not look too closely at the stain. He shakes his head at his own sentence. I thought if I said the right words I could eventually make them true. That is not how truth works. I am learning that today the very hard way. Miriam shifts hope to the other hip. You told me we would tell your mother first, she says. You told me we would tell the pastor next. You told me it would be soon. But soon kept walking away. Her eyes flash then soften. I did not come to break anything that was whole. I came because something was already cracked and pretending to be smooth. Daniel's mother looks at her son. I knew, child, she says quietly. I knew you were married. I told you to bring the truth into light. I told you light does not kill truth, it grows it. She turns to Miriam. I told him to bring you to my table. He said, next week. Next week did not come. Miriam nods once. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Grace wipes her face with the back of her hand. She looks at Miriam. You are brave, she says. The words are simple and sincere. The babies are beautiful. They should never have to be a secret. Kindness moves around the room like a small breeze. It does not fix everything, but it lets lungs fill. The less extreme moment finds them. It does not shout. It sits. Daniel takes out his wallet. He pulls a folded photo, 3 sonograms, black and white. He places them on the table. I kept these in my pocket every day, he says. Even while I was being a coward. He looks at the window. I wanted to be many people at once. A good son. A faithful church worker. A safe man who never makes waves. A husband to Miriam and a partner to Grace, when I should have been brave enough to say no to one of those paths before it hurt anyone. He taps the sonograms with a finger that trembles. I wanted to be kind. But kindness without truth is just sugar on a bitter fruit. No one speaks for a moment. Then the pastor knocks softly and opens the door just a crack. We are giving you time, he says. But there is one more thing. The couple waiting for the next ceremony offered to leave quietly, and they asked us to pass you a message. They said, choose the truth. We can always come back another day. But truth is today's job. The door closes again. The dove on the wall looks like it is listening. Grace lets out a small laugh that is also a sob. Even strangers are kinder than the day expected. Miriam smiles without showing teeth. Kindness is the only piece that fits when everything else falls. Daniel looks at both women. What do you want me to do right now? He asks. He is not trying to lead. He is trying to follow the truth that finally has walked into the room. Grace answers first. Say the real sentence to the real room. Miriam nods. And after you say it, act like it is real. Daniel stands. Okay. They open the door. The church noise quiets like a sea that feels a new moon. The 4 of them, Daniel, Grace, Miriam, and Daniel's mother, walk back toward the altar. The pastor steps aside, letting them take the front. Daniel takes the mic. His voice is steady now, thin but steady like a string that knows the tune. I am married to Miriam, he says. We were married at City Hall last year. I lied to you all. I lied to Grace. I lied to myself. I am sorry. I will accept whatever discipline the church gives. I will do what the law says. I will be a father to my children. I will not hide again. Some people bow their heads. Some people stare. Some people have tears. Some people have anger. That is how truth lands, different on every skin. But it lands. Grace steps forward. I release myself from this altar today, she says, clear and gentle. Not with hate, but with wisdom. I will heal. And I will sing again. Not this hour. But I will. She looks at Miriam, then at the babies. May they grow in a world where adults tell the truth faster. Miriam breathes out. Amen. It feels almost like the room has exhaled for the first time in a long time. The pastor lifts his hand to close the moment with prayer. Before he can speak, the big doors at the back open again. 2 people walk in. One in a neat gray suit holding a leather folder, the other in a dark blue city jacket with a badge clipped to it. The suited man lifts his hand. My name is Mr. Alvarez, he says. I am from the city clerk's office. He taps the folder. We received a call about a possible bigamy complaint connected to a live wedding. We pulled the file. We need to confirm in person the status of a legal marriage already on record. The badge glints in the light. The room tightens again. Every head turns. Every story in the room sits up straight. Mr. Alvarez opens the folder, takes out a certified copy with a raised seal, and reads the names. Daniel Carter and Miriam Wells, he says. Date, 11 months ago. The city officer looks from the paper to the altar, then to the people. If you are attempting a second marriage while the first is valid, she says carefully, this ceremony cannot continue and there may be legal steps we have to take. A cold hush drops like a curtain. The triplets stir. Grace's fingers curl at her sides. The pastor's eyes widen. Daniel's mother grips her purse so tight the leather squeaks. The officer turns to Daniel. Sir, we need to ask you a few questions right now. And the chapter ends there, with the law standing at the back of the church, the truth stamped on paper in a city folder, and everyone holding their breath again as the next wave rises. Friends, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments so I can shout you out in the next story. If this story has you hooked, please like the video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who loves a good twist. The air inside the church grows stiff, as if even the walls are waiting to see what happens next. The officer's words still hang like thunder that hasn't rolled away. Daniel clears his throat. His lips part but the sound comes late. I am married to Miriam, he admits again, this time louder, facing the officer. That paper is true. Gasps ripple across the pews. Some people shake their heads, others cover their mouths. Grace shuts her eyes for a moment, pressing her palm against her chest as if steadying her own heartbeat. The officer nods. Then you understand, sir, this ceremony cannot continue. Attempting to marry while still legally bound is a violation of state law. Her voice is firm but not cruel. Depending on intent, it could even carry charges. Murmurs shoot through the crowd. The triplets begin to whimper again, their tiny cries echoing against the stone walls. Miriam shifts her weight, gently rocking them, whispering, "Shoo, my darlings. Shoo." Daniel's mother speaks up. "Officer," she says, her voice quivering but strong, "this boy has done wrong, yes. But he is not a criminal in his heart. He is a weak man, not a wicked one." The officer softens her gaze but does not lower her badge. "That is not for me to decide, ma'am. My job is to establish the facts." She turns back to Daniel. "Do you admit you came here today to marry someone else while knowing your previous marriage still stands?" The church falls into a deathly silence. Even the ceiling fans seem to hush. Daniel lowers his head. "Yes." His voice cracks. "Yes, I did." A collective groan rises from the audience. Some shake their heads in shame. A man at the back mutters, "Fraud." An older woman clutches her Bible tighter. Grace's veil trembles in her hands as if she is holding on to the last thread of her strength. The officer scribbles something in her notepad. "Then, sir, we'll need you to come with us for questioning after this service. We don't want a scene here, but the law must be respected." Daniel nods, his shoulders sagging under the weight of his own choices. "I'll come," he whispers. Grace finally speaks, her voice breaking like glass. "So all of this, everything, was built on lies?" Daniel turns to her, his eyes wet. "Grace, you are good. Too good. I should never have dragged you into my mess. I was selfish. I wanted to look holy. I wanted to be seen as something I wasn't. But you deserve truth, not pretense." Her lips tremble but she lifts her chin. "Then today I set myself free from your shadow." She pulls the veil off her head and lays it on the altar table. "I may have lost a man, but I will not lose myself." Applause bursts out, not of joy but of respect. Some of the women stand, clapping gently as if blessing her courage. Tears stream down Grace's face but she doesn't wipe them away. The less extreme moment follows, a pause where everyone can breathe again. The pastor clears his throat and steps forward. "This is heavy, but let us remember none of us is spotless. We all stumble. What makes us different is how we rise after the fall." He looks at Daniel, then at Miriam, then at Grace. "The truth is here now. Let us not bury it under anger. Let us let it teach us." Miriam, still rocking the babies, speaks softly but firmly. "I did not come here for the law. I came here for the truth. But if the law must step in, then so be it." She glances at Daniel. "The children deserve a father who is not afraid of light." Daniel's eyes fall to the floor. "I want to be that father," he murmurs. The officer closes her notepad. "Then start by taking responsibility." For a moment it seems like the tension might settle. People whisper quietly, some praying, some shaking their heads. The babies stop crying, their soft breathing like a fragile song in the room. Grace sits down slowly, supported by a friend, her head bowed but her spine straight. And then, just when the church thinks the storm might ease, the side door creaks open again. A man in a dark coat enters, carrying a leather briefcase. His presence is sharp, almost electric. He walks straight down the aisle with long strides. When he reaches the front, he pauses, surveying the scene with eyes that miss nothing. "Good morning," he says in a deep, controlled voice. "My name is Attorney Mitchell. I represent Miriam Wells." He sets the briefcase on the altar table with a heavy thump. "And I am here to file a petition." The pastor's brows knit. "A petition?" Attorney Mitchell snaps open the briefcase, pulling out thick documents. "Yes. Miriam is not here to ruin a wedding. She is here to protect her children. Mr. Carter," he gestures at Daniel, "has obligations. Legal obligations. And today, before God and this community, I intend to make them plain." Gasps ripple once more. Daniel stares at the stack of papers as though they were chains. Grace looks at Miriam in disbelief. Miriam, calm but weary, strokes Hope's hair and whispers, "It's time." The attorney holds up the first document for all to see. "This," he says, "is a lawsuit for child support and spousal recognition." The room explodes in shocked chatter. The pastor raises both hands trying to calm them down, but the tide is rising again. The officer steps closer to see the papers. Daniel sways, pale as if he might collapse. Grace presses her lips tight, watching in stunned silence. And that is where the chapter ends, inside a church now turned courtroom with truth, law, and justice colliding in one place. Friends, where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments below so I can greet you in the next chapter. If this twist has you glued to your seat, make sure to like, subscribe, and share with someone who loves suspenseful stories. You don't want to miss what happens next. The church that had once been filled with songs now feels like a courtroom with wooden pews as benches. Every breath, every shuffle of feet, echoes louder than it should. Attorney Mitchell lays the papers flat on the altar table, his presence commanding the room like a judge who doesn't need a gavel. "This petition," he says clearly, "is not meant to humiliate but to protect. These children did not ask to be born into secrecy. They deserve recognition. They deserve support." He glances at Daniel. "And their mother deserves justice." The officer folds her arms, nodding. He's right. Whether criminal charges are pursued or not, child support is a civil obligation that cannot be ignored. The people murmur. Some shake their heads. Others whisper prayers under their breath. Grace, still seated, grips the pew in front of her as if anchoring herself against another storm. Miriam adjusts the sling holding baby Hope, her expression calm but tired, her eyes locked on the papers as though they represent not war but survival. Daniel's voice breaks the silence. I won't fight it." His shoulders sag. "They are my children. I will not run from that anymore." The less extreme moment follows, soft, almost tender. A woman from the choir stands up slowly, her voice trembling but steady. "Then let us not turn this house into a place of shame," she says. "Let us pray for these children, that they never carry the weight of their father's mistakes." A few people nod, some whispering amen. Even Grace, though her heart feels split, closes her eyes for a brief second. Not for Daniel. Not for Miriam. But for the three little ones who never asked for any of this. But just as the air begins to calm, another voice cuts across the silence. It is Daniel's mother. She steps forward, her eyes burning, her hand gripping her purse strap. "Before we pray, something must be said." Her voice is strong, ringing through the hall. "My son is guilty, yes. But he is not guilty alone." The church gasps. Daniel stares at her in confusion. "Mother." She raises a hand, silencing him. "You kept your secret marriage, Daniel, and that was your sin. But Miriam," she turns, her eyes locking on Miriam, sharp as knives. "Tell them the whole truth. Tell them how this marriage came to be. Or shall I?" Miriam stiffens. She hugs the babies closer. The color drains from her face, but her eyes flash with a storm of pain and defiance. The attorney clears his throat, uneasy. "Mrs. Carter, this is not the place." But the old woman does not stop. She points at Miriam, her finger trembling with age but steady with rage. "Tell them how you forced yourself into my son's life. Tell them what you did, Miriam. Tell them why I warned him it would not last." The audience gasps again, louder this time. The pastor frowns deeply. "Sister Carter, if you have something to reveal, say it clearly. Do not sow confusion." The old woman breathes heavily, her chest rising and falling. "Fine. I will say it. This marriage, this so-called holy union, was built on lies from the beginning. Miriam tricked him. She trapped him." The room erupts into chaos. Some people shout, "What does she mean?" Others lean forward, eyes wide with shock. The triplets stir again, crying louder, sensing their mother's tension. Miriam finally speaks, her voice breaking. "That's not true." She shakes her head. "I loved him. I did not trap him. He chose me. He said he wanted me." Her eyes glisten with tears, but her words are steady. "I never forced him into anything." Daniel's mother slams her hand on the table, making the papers flutter. "Then explain, Miriam. Explain why you showed up at City Hall that day with your bag packed, already knowing he would say yes. Explain how you came into his life when you knew he was trying to prepare for ministry. Explain why I warned him again and again that you were not the one." The tension in the room rises like a wave about to break. Grace's eyes flick back and forth between them, trying to piece together the puzzle. Daniel looks torn apart, his mouth opening but no words forming. Attorney Mitchell frowns, clearly not expecting this confrontation. And then Miriam shouts, louder than anyone expects. Because he begged me not to leave him. Because he said he couldn't breathe without me. The babies cry harder, as if echoing their mother's pain. The audience falls into stunned silence. Tears spill down Miriam's cheeks. I did not force him. He pulled me in. He promised me forever. And when I found out I was pregnant, I was ready to raise them alone. But he came back. He came back and said he would stand with me. That we would build a family. She turns to Daniel's mother, her voice breaking. So don't you dare call me a trap. Don't you dare paint me as a villain when I was the one left hiding in the shadows. The old woman looks shaken but not broken. She presses her lips tight, refusing to speak again. All eyes turn to Daniel. His chest rises and falls as though he has been running for miles. It's true, he admits finally, his voice hoarse. Miriam didn't trap me. I chose her. I begged her to stay. I told her I couldn't face life without her. I lied to her as much as I lied to everyone else. This mess is mine, not hers. The room gasps again, but softer this time. Grace presses a trembling hand to her forehead, whispering, "What have I walked into?" The pastor raises his hand once more, his voice cutting through the noise. Then the truth is this: 2 people bound themselves in secret, one by fear, one by desperation. And now the fruit of that secrecy is here, crying in our arms. He shakes his head, eyes heavy. Sin does not need enemies. It destroys itself. The less extreme moment lingers, quiet, heavy but calmer. Some people bow their heads. Some reach for tissues. The triplets finally calm down, their cries softening into hiccups. And just when the church begins to breathe again, Attorney Mitchell speaks once more, pulling another paper from his briefcase. This, he says gravely, is not only a petition for child support. He holds it high. This is a demand for Daniel Carter to publicly recognize Miriam Wells, not only as the mother of his children, but as his lawful wife. If he refuses, we will take this case to court. The room freezes. Grace gasps, covering her mouth. Daniel's knees buckle slightly as if the ground is shaking beneath him. Miriam closes her eyes, clutching her babies tighter. The officer looks at Daniel. You heard the attorney. What is your answer? And the chapter ends there, inside a church now transformed into a battlefield of love, lies, and law, with the question hanging heavy in the air. Will Daniel choose truth in full, or will he run again? Friends, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments so I can greet you by name in the next chapter. If this twist caught you off guard, like the video, subscribe and share with someone who loves shocking folktales. The storm is only beginning, don't miss what comes next. The officer's question hangs in the air like a sword suspended by a thin thread. What is your answer? Daniel's lips part, but no words come out. His chest rises and falls, his fingers trembling at his side. The triplets stir again, as though even they are waiting for their father's response. Grace's eyes fix on him, wide, burning with pain and disbelief. Miriam clutches the babies closer, her face pale but defiant. Attorney Mitchell keeps his gaze steady, the document still raised in his hand like an unshakable verdict. The church waits. Daniel swallows hard. He takes a step forward, his shoes echoing against the floor. His voice cracks as he speaks. I will recognize her. Miriam is my wife. She has always been my wife. Gasps ripple through the congregation. Some shake their heads, others whisper, Lord have mercy. Grace clutches her chest as if struck by a physical blow. The bouquet she had dropped earlier lies wilted on the floor, like her dreams that never had the chance to bloom. Daniel continues, forcing himself to meet the eyes of everyone watching. I was wrong to hide her. I was wrong to hide my children. I wanted to be seen as righteous, but all I did was pile lie on top of lie. If I must pay for it, I will pay. But I will not hide again. The less extreme moment follows. Silence that is not heavy this time, but thoughtful. The pastor closes his eyes and whispers, truth has finally stepped into the light. A few people bow their heads. Some murmur, Amen. But then the storm returns. Grace stands suddenly, her face streaked with tears but her back straight. So that's it, she says, her voice sharp. You admit this in front of everyone, and I'm supposed to walk away carrying shame that isn't mine? The crowd shifts uneasily. The pastor looks at her with compassion, but she waves off his comfort. No, let me speak. Because I have been humiliated in front of friends, family, and strangers. I gave him my trust, and he gave me betrayal dressed as purity. Her words cut deep, echoing through the hall. Do you know what it feels like to plan a life, to dream of children, to imagine a future, and then discover on the altar that it was all a lie? She points at Daniel, her finger trembling. You don't just owe Miriam and those babies. You owe me an apology in front of every single person who heard your lies. The audience hums with agreement. She's right, someone whispers. He must answer her. Daniel turns to her, shame etched into every line of his face. Grace, his voice breaks. I'm sorry, truly. You deserved honesty, not humiliation. You deserved a man who was free to love you openly. I was not that man. Forgive me if you can. Grace stares at him, her eyes shimmering with fury and sorrow. Forgive? Maybe one day. But not today. Today I choose myself. She lifts her chin, wipes her tears, and turns to the people. Let no one pity me. I lost a wedding, yes, but I saved myself from a lifetime of lies. And that is victory. The church erupts into applause, not out of joy but respect. Grace leaves the altar, her steps slow but steady, her friends rushing to support her. The less extreme moment lingers, people whispering prayers for her strength, nodding at her courage. But before the calm can settle, Attorney Mitchell slams the papers back onto the altar with finality. Then it is settled, he declares. Miriam Wells is recognized here today as Daniel Carter's lawful wife. And we will see to it in court that his responsibilities to her and the children are enforced. The officer nods. I'll be escorting you after this service, Mr. Carter, for questioning. We'll also need financial records for the child support claim. The congregation gasps again. Some murmur, this is too much for one day. Others simply sit in stunned silence, unable to process the storm they have witnessed. Daniel's mother closes her eyes, tears rolling down her wrinkled cheeks. The truth has legs, she whispers. It always walks in. And then, as if the day has not spilled enough secrets, a voice rises from the back, loud, trembling, urgent. I have something to say. Everyone turns. A young man steps forward, no older than 22, his shirt wrinkled, his hands shaking. His eyes lock on Daniel, burning with something between rage and sorrow. You don't even know me, he says. But I know you. And if this truth is coming out, then mine must too. The pastor frowns. Who are you, son? The young man takes a deep breath. My name is Jason Wells. And Miriam is my sister. But Daniel is not just her husband. He is something more. Something you all need to hear. The church freezes. Miriam gasps, clutching the babies tighter. Daniel's eyes widen, panic flooding his face. The young man steps closer to the altar, his voice trembling but loud. Daniel Carter is not just married to Miriam. He is tied to her in a way none of you could imagine. The audience erupts into shocked whispers, the weight of another secret about to be unleashed. And the chapter ends there, with the church on fire with curiosity, Miriam clutching her children, Daniel's face pale as ash, and Jason's words hanging like thunder before the lightning. Friends, where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments so I can greet you in the next chapter. If this revelation shocked you, like the video, subscribe and share this story. The storm is not over, the biggest secrets are yet to come. The church is so silent you could hear a pin drop. Jason's words linger in the air like smoke after fire. Daniel Carter is not just married to Miriam. He is tied to her in a way none of you could imagine. Murmurs ripple through the pews. What does he mean? Is there more? What could be worse than this? Miriam's arms tighten protectively around the triplets, her face pale. Jason, she whispers, her voice trembling, don't. But Jason shakes his head. His hands tremble, but his eyes burn with determination. No, Miriam. The truth is already here. Better it all comes out than half-truths that leave wounds festering. Daniel looks like the ground has been pulled out from beneath him. His lips part, his eyes wide with panic. Jason, stop. Please don't do this here. The pastor raises his hand. Young man, speak clearly. If you have something to reveal, say it so we can understand. Half words will only deepen confusion. Jason takes a deep breath, steps closer to the altar and points at Daniel. That man is not just my sister's husband. He is her former pastor. The congregation gasps so loud the wooden rafters seem to shake. Jason continues, his voice trembling but fierce. He stood in front of her, preaching purity and holiness, all while meeting her in secret. He counseled her, prayed with her, and then convinced her to keep their relationship hidden because he said the church would never understand. He used his position, his authority, to make her believe it was love, when it was manipulation. Miriam closes her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jason, stop, she whispers again, but her voice is weak as though the strength has been drained out of her. Daniel staggers back a step, his face pale. That's not true. His voice cracks. I loved her. I still love her. Jason's fists clench at his sides. Love? You call it love to make her your shadow? To keep her locked away while you built a shining image in front of everyone else? She gave you everything, her trust, her body, her future. And you gave her silence. The church erupts into shouts. Lord have mercy. Is this true? A pastor? The murmurs rise until the pastor has to pound his hand against the pulpit. Order. We need order in God's house. Daniel's mother sinks onto a pew, her face in her hands. I warned him, she sobs. I warned him the truth would not stay buried. The officer steps forward, her voice sharp. If what this young man is saying is true, it may not only be a moral failure. It could have legal consequences, especially if there was any abuse of trust or power. She turns to Daniel. Sir, you need to be very careful with your words. The less extreme moment follows, an eerie quiet as everyone waits for Daniel's reply. Daniel raises his hands, his voice desperate. Yes, I was Miriam's pastor for a short time. Yes, I counseled her. But don't twist it. I didn't manipulate her. I fell in love with her. I tried to fight it. I prayed, I fasted, I begged God to take it away. But the more time we spent together, the deeper I fell. I told myself I'd marry her openly one day, but I was a coward. I let fear of the church's judgment chain me down. He turns to Miriam, his eyes filled with anguish. It wasn't manipulation. I swear it. I loved you then and I love you now. I only failed to love you with courage. Miriam shakes her head slowly, her tears dripping onto Hope's tiny curls. Love without courage is still betrayal, Daniel. The audience murmurs again, but softer this time, pity mixing with judgment. Just as the air begins to settle, another voice cuts through the silence. This time it is Grace. She stands, wiping her face, her voice trembling but clear. So all along I was never your first choice. I was just your cover. The woman you paraded in white while hiding the one you really gave your vows to. Her voice breaks into sobs. You didn't just betray me, Daniel. You betrayed this entire church. You betrayed God himself. The crowd murmurs amen, and she's right. The less extreme moment follows. Quiet sobs, whispers of prayers, people shaking their heads in sorrow. The weight of it all presses down on the room. And then, just as it seems the storm might pass, Jason speaks again, his voice sharp, final, and devastating. There's more. He pulls a folded paper from his pocket, holding it high for all to see. I have proof. Proof that Daniel Carter didn't just marry Miriam in secret. He forged documents to hide it. The church gasps as one. The officer's eyes narrow. Forged documents? Jason unfolds the paper, his hands shaking but steady enough. This is a copy of the marriage record. Look at the date. He changed it. He tried to make it look like it never happened when he applied for this second wedding. The officer snatches the paper, scanning it quickly. Her eyes widen. If this is real, then we're no longer talking about just lies in a church. This is fraud. And fraud is a crime. The church explodes into chaos once again. Some cry out to heaven. Others shout angrily. A baby in the back wails as though sensing the storm. Daniel's knees buckle. He clutches the pulpit for balance, his face white as chalk. No, he whispers. No, it can't be. The officer steps closer, her hand resting on her badge. Sir, if this evidence checks out, you may not just be leaving here for questioning, you may be leaving here in handcuffs. The congregation gasps louder than ever before. The triplets begin to cry again, their small voices piercing the air like alarms. Miriam holds them tighter, her tears flowing freely. Grace clasps her hands together, whispering, God help us. And that is where the chapter ends, with Daniel trembling at the pulpit, his world collapsing, the officer holding evidence of fraud, and the whole church bracing for the unthinkable. The groom leaving his own wedding not with a bride but with the law. Friends, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments so I can shout you out in the next chapter. If this twist shook you, hit the like button, subscribe, and share this story with someone who loves suspense. The biggest storm has just begun. You don't want to miss what happens next. The church trembles with noise, prayers, whispers, gasps, and murmurs all colliding at once. The officer grips Jason's document tightly, her face stern, her badge glinting under the ceiling lights. Daniel leans on the pulpit, his knees weak, sweat running down his temples. The triplets cry louder, their tiny voices cutting through the chaos like alarm bells. The pastor bangs his hand on the wooden lectern. Silence. His deep voice echoes across the hall. The congregation quiets, but their eyes burn with curiosity, shock, and judgment. The officer steps closer to Daniel, her tone sharp but controlled. Mr. Carter, forging legal documents is a serious offense. If this paper is authentic, you could face charges far beyond a broken wedding vow. Daniel stares at the paper in her hand, his lips trembling. I didn't forge anything, he whispers. I only asked a friend to adjust the date. His words stumble, weak, falling apart under their own weight. The congregation gasps again. Someone shouts, adjusting is the same as lying. Another cries, you deceived us all. Daniel's mother slumps in her seat, her hands gripping her scarf. My son, oh God, my son. The less extreme moment follows, silence heavy as stone. Miriam rocks the babies gently, whispering soft lullabies through her tears. Grace wipes her face with trembling hands, her body shaking as if she is both broken and strong at the same time. Then Jason speaks again, his voice filled with fire. You didn't just adjust a date, Daniel. You rewrote the truth. You wanted to erase my sister from your story. But you can't erase flesh and blood, you can't erase those children. He points at the triplets, their cries echoing in the rafters. They are proof of everything you tried to bury. The people murmur in agreement. The boy is right. The babies are innocent. Justice must be done. Daniel raises his head, his face streaked with tears. I was afraid, he shouts, his voice cracking like thunder. Afraid of losing my place in the church. Afraid of losing respect. Afraid of losing everything I worked for. I thought if I could hide it long enough I'd fix it somehow. But lies don't fix anything, they only break more. The words hang in the air, a confession too late. The pastor's face is grave. You tried to build your life on fear, Daniel. But fear is sand, it cannot hold a house. And now the tide has come in. The congregation murmurs, Amen. The less extreme moment softens the storm for a breath. An elderly woman in the choir stands and begins to hum a hymn, her voice shaky but steadying the room. One by one, others join her, the song rising softly like balm over wounds. But just as the calm begins to settle, the officer lowers her notepad and delivers the blow. Mr. Carter, she says, her tone cold and final, I have no choice but to detain you for further questioning. Based on this document, we may be dealing with fraud. She pulls a pair of silver handcuffs from her belt. The congregation gasps in unison. Some cry out, Lord have mercy. Others whisper, not in God's house. Miriam shields the babies, turning her head away, her tears dripping onto their small blankets. Grace covers her mouth with her hand, her eyes wide. The pastor steps forward, his hand lifted. Please, not here. This is a house of prayer. If you must take him, let it be outside. The officer hesitates, then nods. Very well. But he is coming with us now. She grips Daniel's arm, pulling him gently but firmly from the pulpit. The sound of metal cuffs clicking shut fills the sanctuary like a funeral bell. The church erupts again, cries, wails, gasps. Daniel's mother collapses onto her knees, weeping. Grace sobs openly, her friends holding her shoulders. Miriam clutches the triplets tighter, whispering, You still have me, my loves. You still have me. Daniel lowers his head, shame covering him like a cloak. His voice breaks as the officer begins to lead him away. I am sorry, to all of you. And just when it seems the storm has reached its peak, Jason calls out again, his voice cutting through the noise. Wait. Everyone turns. Jason steps forward, his eyes blazing. There's one more thing everyone must know, one more truth that will change everything about this story. The church freezes. Miriam gasps, Jason, no. But Jason doesn't stop. His voice rises, sharp as a knife. The babies, they're not just proof of Daniel's lies. They're proof of something much bigger. Something he never wanted you to find out. The congregation erupts in shocked whispers, the pastor shouting for order. Daniel turns, his face drained of color. Jason, don't you dare. Jason lifts his chin, ready to drop the final bombshell. These triplets. And the chapter ends right there, with Jason's words hanging on the edge of revelation, the officer holding Daniel in cuffs, and the entire church leaning forward in breathless anticipation. Friends, where are you watching from? Drop your city or state in the comments so I can greet you in the next chapter. If this moment has you on edge, hit the like button, subscribe and share this story. The biggest secret is seconds away from being revealed. You won't believe what comes next. Jason's words hang like thunder before lightning, These triplets. The whole church leans forward, breaths held, hearts pounding. Miriam's arms tighten around the babies as if she can shield them from words as easily as from the wind. Grace clutches her chest, trembling. Daniel, already in handcuffs, jerks toward Jason, his face pale and desperate. "Don't say it," he shouts, his voice breaking. "Jason, don't." But Jason doesn't stop. His eyes burn with fury and pain. He points at the children, then at Daniel. These triplets are not just his children. They carry something he never wanted anyone to know. Something written in their very blood. The congregation gasps. What does he mean? Blood. Lord help us. Jason raises his voice, clear and sharp. Daniel is not who he claims to be. He has lived under a false name. And these children, these innocent little ones, are proof of his hidden past. The church erupts into chaos. People stand shouting, crying out to heaven. The pastor bangs his hand on the pulpit. Order. For God's sake, order in this house. Miriam shakes her head, her tears streaming. Jason, stop. Don't drag them into this. Jason turns to her, his voice trembling but resolute. They deserve to grow up with truth, Miriam. No more shadows. No more lies. Daniel's chest heaves, his voice hoarse. It's not what you think. He stares at the congregation, his eyes wild. Yes, I changed my name. Yes, I buried my past. But I was trying to escape what I was born into, not to deceive you all. The officer tightens her grip on his arm. Start talking, Mr. Carter, or whatever your real name is. The less extreme moment follows, the stillness before a storm. Daniel lowers his head, his voice breaking. My real name is David Wells. The church gasps louder than ever. Heads whip toward Miriam. Her face drains of color. David Wells? She whispers. Jason nods grimly. Yes, David Wells. My sister's own cousin. The church explodes. People shout, what? Cousin? Abomination. Others clutch their heads in disbelief. The babies start to wail again, their cries piercing the confusion. Grace staggers backward, nearly collapsing. Cousin? She whispers, her voice cracking. You married your own blood? David, shakes his head violently, tears flying. It wasn't like that. I didn't know at first. I didn't grow up with them. My family was scattered. I only found out the truth when it was already too late, when Miriam was already pregnant. I panicked. I thought if I hid my name, if I hid my past, I could protect everyone. But lies don't protect, they destroy. Miriam sobs openly now, her body shaking. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you trust me to know the truth? David's voice cracks like glass. Because I loved you. And I knew once you knew, you'd walk away. I couldn't bear it. I thought silence was easier. But silence is a poison that kills slower than any blade. The congregation is in uproar again, some weeping, some cursing, some praying aloud. The pastor grips the pulpit, his face pale. This is a great sin. A tragedy for the whole family. The officer's expression hardens. If what he says is true, this is not only a spiritual matter. It may cross into legal consequences depending on state law. And if he falsified his identity on official documents, that's identity fraud on top of everything else. The less extreme moment lingers, people whispering, some clutching their Bibles, others too stunned to speak. Then Grace, shaking but defiant, steps forward. Enough. Her voice cracks like a whip. The room falls silent. I will not let my life be destroyed by his mess. He lied to me, to Miriam, to all of us. But I refuse to drown in his secrets. Today I walk away with my dignity intact. She points at Daniel, David. And I leave you to face the fire you lit. The church bursts into applause for her bravery. Tears run down her cheeks, but her back is straight, her voice unshaken. But before the applause can die down, Jason lifts another paper from his pocket. His voice trembles with both rage and grief. You think this is the worst of it? You think it ends here? No. He holds the paper high. This is proof that Daniel, David, didn't just change his name. He also emptied funds from a family trust that was meant for Miriam and me. The church gasps again. Miriam freezes, her eyes wide. What are you saying? Jason's voice shakes with fury. I'm saying he stole from his own blood. He stole the money that could have given my sister a better life. He robbed us, and then he robbed you all of the truth. The officer grabs the paper from Jason's hand, scanning it quickly. Her face darkens. Bank records. Transactions. If this is legitimate, we're not just talking fraud. We're talking theft. The church explodes louder than ever. cries, shouts, prayers. Miriam clutches the babies tighter, sobbing. David's face collapses in despair, his body trembling. I can explain, he whispers. The officer steps forward, her hand firmly on his shoulder. You'll explain at the station. Because after this, she snaps her cuffs tighter. You're not just a groom without a wedding. You're a suspect under arrest. The church is chaos. Women weep. Men shout. Children cling to their mothers. Grace sobs in her friend's arms. Miriam rocks the babies desperately, whispering, "It will be okay, my loves. It will be okay." And the chapter ends there, with Daniel, no David, in handcuffs, the officer dragging him toward the doors, the truth of blood, betrayal, and theft spilling into the open, and the whole church caught in a storm they will never forget. Friends, where are you watching from? Share your city or country in the comments so I can greet you in the next chapter. If this twist shocked you, hit like, subscribe, and share this story. The secrets are not done yet. The next revelation will shake the very foundation of this tale. The doors swing open as the officer pulls David, once known as Daniel, toward the exit. The sound of the handcuffs clinking against his wrists echoes like iron chains through the sanctuary. The congregation murmurs, some crying, some whispering prayers, others too stunned to speak. Miriam, still clutching the triplets, trembles where she stands. Jason hovers close by, protective, his eyes flashing with both triumph and sorrow. Grace sits rigid in her pew, her veil abandoned on the floor, staring blankly ahead as if her entire future has been rewritten in an instant. The pastor lifts both hands, his voice firm though heavy with grief. People of God, let us not let judgment consume us. We must remember, sin destroys but mercy rebuilds. These children, he points at the crying triplets, are innocent. Their future depends on what we choose to do today. The less extreme moment follows. A woman in the choir rises slowly and begins to hum a hymn of comfort. Others join, their voices weaving through the air like a blanket of calm. For a moment, the chaos softens. Even the babies stop wailing, hiccuping softly against Miriam's chest. But the calm doesn't last. As David reaches the doorway, he suddenly stops. He turns, his face pale and wet with tears, his eyes desperate. "Wait," he cries, his voice cracking. "You've heard their truths, but you haven't heard mine. Before I leave this church, you need to know why I did what I did." The officer tugs at his arm. "Save it for the station." But David resists, his voice loud enough to shake the rafters. "If I don't say it now, they'll only believe half the story. Yes, I lied. Yes, I changed my name. Yes, I hid Miriam and the children. But you don't know the reason. You don't know the danger that chased me here." The church gasps. "Danger? What is he talking about?" Jason sneers. "Another lie." David shakes his head furiously. "No. This time it's the truth. I stole from the trust, yes, but not for myself. I took that money because someone was after me. Someone who promised to destroy my entire family if I didn't pay. I didn't know what else to do." The officer frowns. "Who?" David's eyes dart around the sanctuary. His lips tremble. "A man you all know. A man who sits among you even today." The congregation explodes in confusion. People crane their necks, searching faces, whispering names. The pastor slams his hand on the pulpit. "Enough riddles, David. Speak plainly. Who are you accusing?" David raises his chin, his voice breaking but clear. "The man who blackmailed me into hiding my marriage, the man who took every coin I had, is none other than Deacon Harris." The church erupts. Gasps echo. Women shout. Men rise to their feet. Every head turns toward the middle pew where Deacon Harris sits, an older man in a gray suit, a Bible on his lap, his face pale as chalk. Deacon Harris stammers, That's a lie." He clutches his Bible tightly. "I never—" David interrupts, shouting, "You threatened me. You told me the church would cast me out if I admitted my marriage. You said you'd spread rumors that you'd ruin my mother, my children, Miriam, unless I gave you the money. I have the messages. I kept them all." The officer stiffens. "If that's true, we'll see the evidence." The less extreme moment follows, the congregation buzzing like a hive, some glaring at Deacon Harris, others whispering in disbelief. The pastor looks shaken, his hands trembling as he grips the pulpit. "Deacon Harris, is this true?" The old man stands, his hands shaking, his face drenched in sweat. I only did what I thought was best for the church. We couldn't survive another scandal. I told him to keep it quiet until he was ready. But I never blackmailed him." Jason shouts from across the aisle, "You drained him of money. You bled him until he had nothing left." Miriam whispers through her tears. Is that why you kept hiding David? Why you kept telling me soon? Because he was holding you by the throat. David nods furiously. Yes. I wanted to tell you, but every time I tried, he reminded me what he'd do to you. To the babies. To my mother. I was weak, I gave in. I thought money would keep him quiet. But lies never stay quiet. The congregation roars in confusion. Some shout at Harris. Others cry out to God. The officer looks from David to Harris, her jaw tight. If what he says is true, then both of you will answer for it. Blackmail is just as serious as fraud. And then the storm surges again. Jason pulls another folded sheet from his pocket, his hand shaking but his voice strong. You want evidence? He waves the paper. I have it right here. The text messages, the bank transfers, all of it. The congregation gasps. The officer rushes forward, snatching the paper. She scans it quickly, her eyes widening. This could be enough to charge Harris as well. The pastor staggers back, his face pale. A deacon? Involved in such sin? The church explodes into shouting, anger, grief, betrayal. The hymn that had once calmed the storm is drowned out by thunderous voices. Grace clings to her friends, her tears falling like rain. Miriam shakes, torn between shock and sorrow, holding her babies tighter as though they are the only steady thing in her crumbling world. And then the officer speaks, her voice firm, silencing the room. Deacon Harris. David Carter, also known as David Wells. Both of you are coming with me. Now. The congregation gasps as two men, the groom and the deacon, stand accused side by side, ready to be led out in chains. And the chapter ends right there, with the officer preparing to march them both out of the church, the congregation in chaos, Miriam trembling with her children, Grace broken but unbowed, and Jason standing firm, the evidence of corruption finally in the light. Friends, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments so I can greet you in the next chapter. If this twist stunned you, hit like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who loves shocking folktales. The finale is near. The truth has not finished speaking. The church is in uproar. Mothers wail, men shout, children cling to their parents as the officer steps forward, one hand on David's shoulder, the other gesturing for Deacon Harris to come out of the pew. Harris resists at first, his face red with shame and fury. This is madness. What? All lies, he bellows, clutching his Bible against his chest like a shield. I have served this church for 30 years. I built the roof over our heads. I raised funds when no one else would. And now you believe him, a liar, a fraud, a coward, over me? The officer's voice is sharp. Deacon Harris, step forward. Now. The congregation shouts. Some cry, it can't be true. Others hiss, we knew something was wrong. The tension is so thick it feels like the air itself could split. Miriam rocks the triplets, whispering, hush, my loves. Hush. But her own tears soak their tiny blankets. Grace sits stiff in her pew, her hands gripping the wood so tight her knuckles turn white. Jason glares at Harris, his jaw tight. The less extreme moment follows, a heavy silence before the storm breaks again. Harris trembles, looking at the officer, at the congregation, at the pastor. Finally, his shoulders sag. His voice softens, breaking. Yes, he whispers. I took his money. The church gasps in unison. Harris stumbles on, his words spilling like a broken dam. I was drowning. My debts piled up. The loan sharks threatened me. My family was falling apart. I thought if I silenced David, with threats I could save myself. I told him to hide Miriam, to hide the children. I told him I'd ruin him if he spoke the truth. I used him. He presses the Bible to his forehead, sobbing. God forgive me. The church explodes, cries of betrayal, shouts of anger, groans of despair. A deacon? How could he? God have mercy. The pastor leans heavily on the pulpit, his voice shaking. Sin at the altar. Lies in the house of God. Today the roof has cracked, but truth has finally come in. The officer nods grimly. Both of you are under arrest. Fraud. Blackmail. Identity falsification. You'll answer for it in court. She signals to her partner, who steps forward. Harris drops his Bible. It hits the floor with a hollow thud. David, still in cuffs, hangs his head low, silent. The less extreme moment follows, the congregation watching in stunned quiet as the two men are led toward the door. The sound of footsteps and clinking cuffs fills the church like funeral drums. And then Miriam, shaking but strong, rises. She steps to the altar, clutching her babies tight, her face streaked with tears but her voice clear. You all saw today what lies can do. How fear can poison love. How greed can destroy families. But I will not let my children grow in shame. She lifts her chin, her eyes blazing with quiet fire. I will raise them in truth. They will know who they are. And they will not inherit their father's chains. The congregation erupts, not in anger but in applause. Some stand. Some clap. Some cry openly, shouting amen, and God bless you, Miriam. Grace, still trembling, stands as well. Her voice breaks but carries across the hall. And I will not let this day destroy me. Yes, I was humiliated. But I leave here free from lies. I will heal. I will rebuild. And I will sing again. The pastor, tears streaming down his cheeks, raises both hands. Today we saw sin. But we also saw courage. We saw women standing tall when men fell. We saw truth rise where lies tried to reign. May we learn. May we never forget. The officer leads David and Harris through the doors. The heavy wood closes behind them with a thud that feels like an ending, and also a beginning. The less extreme moment settles. The choir hums softly, the people bow their heads, and the babies finally fall asleep in Miriam's arms. But the final extreme revelation comes when Jason steps forward one last time. He holds a sealed envelope, his voice steady but grave. Before I sit down, I must say this. The family trust, the one David stole from, it wasn't just money. It was an inheritance left by our late father. He looks at Miriam, then at the pastor. And it was worth not thousands but millions. He didn't just steal money. He stole a future. The congregation gasps. Miriam nearly drops the envelope, her eyes wide with shock. Millions? She whispers. Jason nods. Yes. Millions that were supposed to lift you out of struggle. Millions that could have given these babies the life they deserve. The pastor grips the pulpit, his voice low. Then justice will not only punish, it will restore. What was stolen must return. The story closes with Miriam holding her children tighter, Grace lifting her chin with strength, Jason standing as protector, and the congregation whispering prayers of mercy. David and Harris are gone, but their downfall leaves a lesson carved into the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. Lies may run, but truth has legs. And truth always finds the altar. Friends, thank you for staying through this storm. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I want to greet you personally. If this finale shook you, hit like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who loves suspense and life lessons. Remember, kindness, honesty, and courage are the only foundations that never crack. Backhand index pointing right. So tell me, if you were Miriam, would you forgive David? Or would you walk away forever?